Los Angeles, California, Chinatown District, a private martial arts facility on the second floor of a building most people walk past without noticing. February 14th, 1998, Saturday evening, 7:30 p.m. The space is maybe 1,200 square feet, wooden floors worn smooth from decades of training, walls faded to cream. No mirrors, no banners, no trophies. Fluorescent lighting. Outside, Chinatown is alive with weekend energy, but inside this room, the atmosphere is completely different. Contained, focused, professional. 8 people are present. No cameras, no recording equipment, no press. This is a private demonstration, arranged quietly through industry connections. 4 are studio executives from Warner Brothers. 2 are action choreographers. 1 is a translator. And 1 is the person who requested this meeting, a man whose name was not recorded in official documentation, but whose credentials are consistent across witness accounts. According to those present, this man was in his early 40s, 6 feet tall, around 190 pounds. His background included competitive wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu training under one of the Gracie family members, and participation in several early UFC events. He had transitioned into stunt coordination and action choreography, known as someone who understood both filmmaking and practical combat. He was skeptical of techniques that looked impressive but lacked functional application. Warner Brothers was developing Lethal Weapon 4, and they wanted Jet Li for a significant role. Jet Li had been in Hollywood for less than a year, recently arrived from Hong Kong, where he was already an established action star. But Hollywood operated differently. The executives needed assurance that Jet Li could deliver what American audiences expected, increasingly influenced by MMA and realistic fight choreography. The choreographer had been brought in to evaluate whether Jet Li's wushu background could function under resistance, under pressure, when the opponent was not cooperating. Jet Li stood on one side of the training space, wearing black workout pants and a gray t-shirt, barefoot. 5 feet 7 inches, approximately 135 pounds, his frame compact and efficient. His expression was calm, neutral. He understood this was not about performing demonstration routines, but addressing specific doubts from someone who understood fighting differently. The choreographer stood across from him, hands on his hips. "Mr. Li, I appreciate you taking the time for this. My concern is simple. Wushu is beautiful, but it's designed for demonstration. I come from a background where we train for actual fighting. No rules, no forms. So I need to see if your techniques function outside of choreography." Jet Li listened through the translator. Though witnesses noted, he seemed to understand the English before translation. He nodded once. "I understand your concern. You want to know if what I do is real or just performance. That is fair. What would you like to see?" The choreographer made his proposal. "Ground fighting. That's where wushu typically fails. Most strikers can't handle someone who knows how to grapple. I attempt takedowns. You defend however you want. Controlled, professional, but with real intent." But what none of the 8 people in that room realized at first was that Jet Li had already agreed before the choreographer finished explaining. He had not hesitated, had not requested modifications. He simply nodded and gestured to the center of the floor. The executives moved to the edges. The fluorescent lights cast no shadows, everything visible, documented by 8 pairs of eyes. No formal referee, no timer, no rules beyond the understanding this was a demonstration of technique, not a fight intended to injure. The choreographer removed his shoes and took a moment to center himself. Jet Li stood 3 feet away, hands relaxed at his sides, weight evenly distributed, breathing slow and controlled. He was not in any recognizable ready position. He simply stood, present, waiting. The choreographer moved first, closing distance quickly, and shot for a single-leg takedown, a fundamental wrestling technique. Clean execution, proper form, explosive movement. Jet Li's body moved, but not as anticipated. No backward scramble, no defensive sprawl. His hips rotated slightly, maybe 3 inches to the left, and his weight shifted, so his legs seemed to not be where the choreographer's hands were reaching. The choreographer's arms closed around empty space. His momentum carried him forward, and he had to plant his hands to avoid falling. He pushed back up immediately, surprise on his face but not frustration. He tried again, different approach, reaching for Jet Li's upper body to control the clinch. Again, Jet Li moved, minimal displacement, his body angling just enough that the choreographer's hands made contact but could not establish the grip points needed. It was not that Jet Li blocked or pushed away. His body seemed to be in continuous motion so subtle that there was nothing solid to grab. The choreographer later described it as trying to grab water. The real tension, though, was about to begin, because after the second failed attempt, the choreographer took a step back, breathing harder, and looked at Jet Li with different attention. What he was experiencing did not match his understanding of how this was supposed to work. A person with no grappling background should be easy to take down. But Jet Li was doing something else entirely, outside the framework of wrestling or jiu-jitsu defensive techniques. The third attempt was more committed, more aggressive. The choreographer shot low for a double-leg takedown, both arms wrapping around both of Jet Li's legs, driving forward with his shoulder, using body weight and momentum. For a fraction of a second, he felt like he had succeeded. His arms were around Jet Li's legs. His weight was committed. What happened in the next 12 seconds would be debated for years afterward, not because witnesses disagreed on what occurred, but because they struggled to articulate how. Jet Li did not resist conventionally. He did not brace, did not sprawl, did not overpower with backward force. Instead, his body seemed to go with the motion, but in a direction neither forward nor backward, something diagonal, something circular. His hips rotated, his weight dropped but not to the ground. His hands made contact with the choreographer's upper back, not pushing, not striking, just touching, and somehow that touch redirected the entire flow of force. The choreographer found himself moving past where Jet Li had been, his arms still wrapped around air, his balance compromised. He came up to his feet, breathing heavily, face flushed with exertion and confusion. He looked at Jet Li, who had returned to that same relaxed position, breathing unchanged, no visible sign of effort. "What are you doing? That's not grappling defense. That's not anything I recognize. Can you do that again? Slower?" Jet Li's response, delivered through the translator but with a slight smile, was simple. "Slower is more difficult, but I can try." But only one person in the room noticed something that changed everything. One of the studio executives, a man who had practiced Aikido for years, later told colleagues he had been watching Jet Li's breathing throughout the demonstration. He said Jet Li's respiratory rate had not changed once, not during the first takedown attempt, not during the second, not during the third. His chest rose and fell with the same rhythm it had when standing still. It was like watching someone who was not exerting effort, responding from a place of such complete control that there was no spike in adrenaline, no stress response, nothing that registered as physical exertion. The choreographer set up for a fourth attempt, this time with permission to go slower so everyone could observe the mechanics. He shot for the single leg again, deliberately reducing his speed to about 60%. Jet Li's response was equally measured, and this time, because the movement was slowed, witnesses could observe the details. His front leg moved backward approximately 4 inches, not a full step, just a small displacement. Simultaneously, his rear leg moved forward the same distance, so his overall position remained almost unchanged. But the specific target had shifted just enough to make the grab incomplete. At the same time, Jet Li's hands made contact with the choreographer's shoulders, not pushing, but guiding the momentum slightly to the left, maybe 5 degrees off the original line. The cumulative effect was that the choreographer's technique, which would have worked against a static target, encountered something neither static nor conventionally defensive. He completed his motion, but found himself slightly off balance. And when he tried to adjust, Jet Li's hands were already controlling his upper body structure in a way that made recovery mechanically difficult. And then, for exactly 3 seconds, the entire room went completely silent. The choreographer was bent forward, his hands on Jet Li's leg, but without the grip needed, and Jet Li's hands were resting on the choreographer's shoulders with minimal pressure. Then Jet Li did something witnesses later described as impossible to fully capture in words. His body rotated, not a full turn, maybe 45 degrees, and the rotation created a subtle shift in hand position. That shift, combined with a small step that changed the angle of his hips, resulted in the choreographer's weight distribution becoming untenable. He was not thrown, not struck, not overpowered, but suddenly his balance was gone, and he had two choices: release his grip or fall. He chose to release, stepped forward, and found himself standing upright. But now Jet Li was behind him, one hand resting lightly on his shoulder blade. The position was not threatening, but the implication was clear. If Jet Li had wanted to follow up, the choreographer was compromised with limited defensive options. Jet Li held the position for 2 seconds, then stepped back. The choreographer turned around, breathing hard. When he spoke, his voice was quieter, more thoughtful. "I've trained with world-class grapplers. I've rolled with people who competed at the highest levels. What you just did, that's not supposed to work. You're not fighting the technique. You're not using strength. You're doing something else entirely." "How?" Jet Li's response addressed the fundamental question. "In wushu, we train to understand body mechanics, not just our own body, but how bodies move, where balance comes from, where force can be redirected. When you attack, you commit your weight, your momentum, your structure to a specific direction. If I meet that force directly, you are stronger, heavier, more experienced. I will lose. But if I do not meet the force, if I move with it, guide it, add just a small change to its direction, then your own commitment becomes the problem. You are fighting your own force, not me. I am just showing your force a different path." The meeting continued for another 20 minutes. The choreographer attempted 2 more takedowns, both resulting in similar outcomes. The studio executives took notes, consulted, made decisions that would later result in contracts. By the time the 8 people left that facility, a consensus had formed. Whatever concerns existed about Jet Li's ability to deliver realistic action had been addressed. Not because he had demonstrated overwhelming power, but because he had shown control, precision, and the ability to make the impossible look effortless. According to witnesses, very little official documentation exists. No video was recorded, no photographs taken. The people present have told versions of this story over the years. The details vary. Some remember 4 takedown attempts, others 5. Some recall 30 minutes, others closer to an hour. But the core remains consistent. A skilled grappler with MMA experience attempted to take down Jet Li using fundamental techniques, and despite advantages in size, weight, and grappling expertise, he could not complete a single successful takedown. The choreographer later told colleagues the experience changed how he thought about martial arts, that it made him realize the limitations of viewing combat through a single lens. He said Jet Li had not beaten him through superior grappling, but had operated from a completely different framework. Jet Li never spoke publicly about this demonstration. He moved forward with Lethal Weapon 4. The film was completed, his fight sequences were well received, and his Hollywood career continued. But those who worked with him on subsequent projects often reference this evening in Chinatown as the moment when Hollywood's understanding shifted from viewing him as a performer to recognizing him as someone who understood combat at a level that transcended style, system, or convention. 8 witnesses. 1 private facility in Chinatown. No cameras, no publicity, no official record. Just a demonstration that lasted less than 15 minutes, but communicated something that contracts and resumes could not. The story remains disputed by some, dismissed by others, but those who were present know what they saw. And more importantly, they know what it meant.